Hi, everyone. It's Audrey.
And David.
We're so happy and grateful that you're here listening to us. We really want to thank the people who follow us on Apple Podcasts and have written reviews. We appreciate you guys.
We hope to increase our reach within the international education community, so we are asking for your help. Please follow our show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music, or your favorite podcast listening app. We have posted instructions on how to do this on our podcast page.
If you like our show and the services we aim to provide, please rate us and write a review. This will help us grow our audience and support our mission of sharing the joys of international teaching with as broad a group as possible. We'd love to increase those numbers in Africa, South America, and Australia.
So thanks again for listening and for all your support. Let's recruit as many teaching peeps as possible to travel,
teach,
and connect with us.
I first met Michael Boll when he and his wife, Lori, moved into our housing compound in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in 1997 or so. Even then, Mike was already geeking out on technology in all sorts of ways. I was just beginning to use email a la AOL, you've got mail, vintage. A few years later, I caught up with Mike in Shanghai when he was at Concordia and part of the Shanghai 2.0 Tech Conference. Now he's got his own business teaching educators about AI. Grass definitely doesn't grow under this guy's feet. He's always on the bleeding edge, playing with the latest and greatest. I have huge admiration for his tech savvy and also his adventurous spirit and his willingness to share his knowledge with us lesser mortals. Not to mention that his dry wit and self-deprecating humor weave through our every interaction. Michael describes himself as a jack-of-all-trades educator, instructor, and designer, and is no stranger to juggling his expertise in education, training, startups, technology, and marketing, all while balancing on a unicycle. His mission, as he has chosen to accept it, is to fearlessly blend existing and newfangled technologies in the classroom, creating an educational smoothie of epic proportions. Michael and his wife, Lori, are parents to an adult child with profound autism. Their family experiences have motivated them to assist all educators to provide all students with inclusive learning opportunities in education. Our guiding question was, how can teachers learn to effectively use AI in their teaching? And what are some instructional techniques they can tap into right now? Here are a few topics covered in this episode. Michael start with AI and his PD platform. AI improving efficiency and productivity for busy teachers. AI for individualizing lessons. AI and school data and privacy. AI-supported instruction in the ES, MS, and HS classrooms, moral and ethical issues, and possible future outcomes of AI for schools. Michael's contact information includes his website, aiteachertips.com. This show was recorded on December 17th, 2024. Prepare to be amazed, entertained, and enlightened. Dare I even say, bowled over by the wit and wisdom of the amazing Michael Boll.
Hello, Michael, and welcome to the podcast. We've been looking forward to this one for a long time. We go way back, the three of us, to Saudi Arabia. So I know you're not in Saudi, so where are you?
So Dave and Audrey, it's wonderful to talk with you guys again, too. I am in Bend, Oregon. It's the U.S. national mecca for all international school teachers to hang out.
It is. I was just mentioning that to someone the other day. It just seems so many people have made that their retirement place, and I just hear great things about it. And what's kind of cool about this episode is Audrey is in Victoria, Canada, and I'm in Boise, Idaho. I think, Audrey, this is the closest we've ever been together with a guest, right?
Yeah, I think it may be. It's amazing. We didn't really have to worry about calendaring issues at all.
Right.
So are you guys going to be educators going local now?
Oh, man.
At least for this one, yeah.
I miss your humor, Michael.
Yeah, I wish my wife said that, but go on. Thank you. This is recorded, right? So I can play it.
It's recorded.
Okay. Oops.
All right, my friend, you have so many experiences internationally and back in the U.S. So how about sharing a going global story with us?
All right. Well, David, it's a good thing I'm okay with my age because thank you for reminding everybody about that. So my going global story comes to us in China. We worked for 8 years in Shanghai, China. And as you guys know, and not maybe the audience knows, we've got a 25-year-old son with profound autism. So we had this sort of issues as we were overseas. We always had to have a schooling situation for him. So we had him in one school, and then we decided after 4 years to change, and we ended up creating our own school in Shanghai called Shine Academy. And so that was probably the biggest challenge, was the idea of creating a business in China and then having teachers and all that sort of stuff, basically running a school for kids with special needs so that our son would have a place to go. So we teamed up with a couple. One was American-born Chinese. The other was Vietnamese, interestingly. And she spoke better Chinese than her husband, but we won't have to talk about that. And they had the business experience. We had kind of the educator's experience. And then we put the school together so that 20, 25 kids could have a place to go to school. Because it's changing now, but a lot of international schools won't allow people with special needs to attend their school.
And Michael, for our listeners, it's been such a journey for you and Laurie as leaders in the field of supporting students with different learning needs. And from afar, I've always admired what you two have been doing. And now Laurie heads up Senya, which is an international organization to support students from the whole spectrum, as we might say, and just all the potential learning needs. And that organization is really leading out to try to make a difference, to find ways to help schools open their doors to more learners. So thanks for all of your hard work all these years.
Well, you do stuff for your kid. We'd all do it. Oh, I was supposed to tie that into AI. The AI tie-in is, boy, it would have been a lot easier if I'd had artificial intelligence as my thought partner to help us with a lot of the stuff that we had to do. And we'll talk about that more later, I think.
Wouldn't it have been wonderful?
Yeah, but I guess I just had to think on my own. Oh, well.
No. And what is it that Edison said? There's no length to which humans will go to avoid having to think. So way to go to the distance, Mike.
Yes, that was very prosaic of him.
All right, so we start with a guiding question. So let me fire it at you here. Since you mentioned AI, that's our big theme for the day. And the question is, how can teachers learn to effectively use AI in their teaching? And what are some instructional techniques that they can tap into right now? And here we go with the first follow-up question. Let's start with your learning journey with AI. How did you get your start with it?
So I'm a bit of a nerd, as you guys probably remember, so that hasn't
No.
changed. That's still part of my identity. I'd heard about artificial intelligence coming along, and everybody's like, yeah, the next 100 years or something, it's going to emerge. And then suddenly this company, OpenAI, released ChatGPT, and I still can't remember what GPT stands for. So it's a weird thing to release with that sort of name. But they released a version 3 or 3.5 at the time that allows you to interact with artificial intelligence. So I just heard about that. It was free. I downloaded it and just started playing with it. I'm like, wow, this thing is really cool. It improves my writing. It gives me ideas. It helps me do lesson planning. It helps me with meal planning. It just goes on and on with all the things that it can do. It does so much stuff I don't even realize I can't even think of ideas for ways to use it. So that was my first experience in it. And I teach some online courses. So I was like, oh, I've got to build a course around this because this is something that teachers have to use. They're going to love it.
And at the end, we're going to get specifically into your course offerings. But for kind of starting us off a little further, tell us how you do work with your teachers through your online courses, just in general, and then maybe narrow it down to AI.
Yeah, so as you know, as teachers, depending on where you're from, you need to have professional development credits to continue with your license. So I've been working with this group called the Heritage Institute for almost 20 years, just teaching courses for them that I design and other teachers on the platform design as well. So as trends go along, it gives you the opportunity, if you're a tech person, to design new courses. So that's what I did specifically, was artificial intelligence, because I thought to myself, wow, teachers are going to love this because it saves them a tremendous amount of time. And the teachers who take the course, not because it's really like the best course in the world, just once they get into AI, they're like, holy crap, this is incredible. I can save myself so much time, I have so much more satisfaction, and then I can concentrate on other things like the students or their home life. There's that too.
So right off the bat, it sounds like the first big wow factor is efficiency, just making life, the workflow easier. Right. All right. What's kind of the next level of responses that you're getting?
From teachers?
Yes.
Going back a little bit, they didn't realize that it was as powerful as it could be. They love the idea that you can individualize. There's a lot more pressure for teachers in the United States now than there was, let's say, 3 or 4 years ago, I guess pre-COVID. And so there's a lot more students like my son with IEPs and stuff. And so you'll have a teacher, and this is not fair, they might have 35 students and 8 are on an IEP. So they're supposed to individualize for all those students. Well, AI is now letting them do that. So they can put lessons in, and then they can change the parameters for that lesson. We could talk more about that later, so that a lesson comes back that's appropriate for that student. Teachers have to do a lot of communication thanks to email. I mean, because technology hasn't really made teachers' jobs easier. It's just made it busier. And so they have to do more communication via email. Well, they can use AI to write those emails, especially if it's one that's difficult email to write. It'll write in neutral tones and things like that for them. And then make like, okay, yeah, good, that's good enough, and send it off. So I think for teachers, it reduces the stress load overall of their jobs because they have way too many stressors and too many things to handle based on the actual time and resources they have.
So, like I said, we're going to share your website. What are the steps someone goes through to work within your platform, to take a course, things like that? What are the steps?
Well, there's sort of two things here. One is the course itself. You'll have the link to the website, aiteachertips.com later, and people can get into that, and they can actually look at all the information for free. They don't need to pay for it unless they're looking to get credits and feedback. So there's that process. But really the more exciting process is independently how they can do artificial intelligence. And that's just to head to one of the services, again, like ChatGPT or Claude or Google, and just set up an account and then immediately start playing. Now, with Google and with ChatGPT, they have a voice version that you can have a conversation with it. But the really cool thing is, this just came out recently, is you can interrupt it. So it's not like you just say something and you wait for the response. You actually say, no, that's not what I meant. So, for example, I might say, hey, I want to make sure I dress and look really good for a podcast. What colors do you think I should wear? And it would go on and on. I say, no, I hate the color black. I should have told you that. I'm sorry. And it'll say, okay, well, try this one, back and forth, on and on and on. So, like, for example, a weird one, and maybe this is a bad use of it. I went to the doctor the other day, the skin doctor, and the skin doctor said, hey, it looks like you have a weird thing on your, it might be a certain kind of, I think it was called a basal cell carcinoma, not a big deal. And so on the whole way home, I was having this chat with ChatGPT while driving. That's not good. And just going back and forth and interrupting it as we were having this two-way conversation. Turned out, by the way, it was benign. But it was just so nice that I had this buddy of mine that I could talk to. And it could become my psychologist if I wanted to. I could say, adopt this guy named, last name Stutz. He's a psychologist that works with Hollywood. And it'll use that sort of point of view to have a conversation about me and tell me all the things that are wrong with me.
So saving you money at the same time.
Exactly. So there's two aspects. One, you can just have this great conversation, and then just maybe a little more detailed, especially if you're not doing the conversation version. Let's say as a teacher, you're asking more specific questions about lesson planning, is understanding how prompts work. So a prompt is like, give me a lesson plan for science on mitosis. Okay, cool. Well, the AI doesn't really know what grade you teach or anything like that. It will eventually. It'll soon know all those things. But prior to that, you have to give it parameters around that prompt. So you have to say what type of response you want. Maybe you want it in a table. What's your audience? Oh, it's grade 3. What sort of tone do you want? I want it in an inspirational tone. What voice do you want? Oh, well, tell me a story in the voice of a pirate. And it'll switch that story or anything to the voice of a pirate. How long do you want it? Well, I want it 500 words. So these are the parameters that teachers learn about as they become better at prompting. And that's probably one of the most important things when it comes to working with artificial intelligence. So for me, it's like nagging artificial intelligence. You're like, that's not right. Do it this way.
Well, let me ask, because I've basically used AI just for travel. Like, what are the best breweries in Oaxaca? Mexico. That's
Sure.
about the extent of my interaction. But what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like once you set up your account, that the engine, the AI engine, or whichever platform you're using, is going to learn from you about, let's say it's a lot about education, and you've done a lot of IEP kind of individualization for certain lessons. Will it remember what it's done for certain kids if you name them and stuff like that? So AI really is learning?
So AI has the memory for sure. So an example of that is, I've been using ChatGPT for over a year. And so I put in the prompt, hey, if the CIA was doing a background check on me, what things would it have to worry about? And where would I be vulnerable to influence? And it put together this whole dossier about a page and a half long of what I like to do and where if a Russian agent was to come and try and influence me, what they would talk about. I'm like, wow, that's pretty accurate. Now, when it comes to individual students, I don't specifically, most people probably just out of convenience don't use actually a name and things like that. But yeah, absolutely. It builds profiles on you as you go, and it takes all your information, uses it for its own learning purposes, but it does get to know you. And so the more you use it, the more the responses relate to, or come out in the way that you'd want it.
Okay, so as we talk about it, the thing that's popping into my head is the movie Her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you are having a bromance with your buddy in your car, whether that'll influence who you are as a person. So I see the moral implications very easily, but maybe you could go a little deeper into what your adult learners experience in your courses.
So yeah, if you haven't seen the movie Her, it's where Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with his OS or operating system. And by the way, it is very close to that level because you can have that sort of conversation where it's in your ear and you're just chatting. It isn't perfect yet, but it's certainly on the way there. So, but you asked more specifically, maybe like ways that they could use it in a classroom, what the teachers are picking up. And you guys would, put in the chat to talk about what they could do at an elementary school level, middle school level, or a high school level. And so like at the elementary school level, teachers are telling me that they're using it to convert text to an easier level for their students. So they can just convert the writing right away and or translate it if they want to. That's super easy. A lot of them use AI as a thought partner for topics to cover during class discussions or morning circle. So if it's Halloween and you want to have a discussion about Halloween, you can do that. If you're a PE teacher and you want to have a game that involves Halloween, and maybe because the second grade is studying bees, you can say, hey, I have 15 students. I want a game that involves Halloween and bees. And I want a lot of movement with 3 balls. And it'll come up with a game. You can say, actually, I want 10 more ideas for that game. It'll come up with 10 more games instantly. And then you go ahead and work from there. When it comes to middle school, that's a lot of rubrics and lesson planning. One of my favorite things is you can use something like suno.com, which will write a song for you and have a singer. So you can say, hey, write a song. Let's go back to mitosis and write the lyrics for me. It will. And then also, hey, I want it to be in the voice or sound of Taylor Swift. And then a song comes out that has the same style as Taylor Swift. And you can play that for your students. So it's a fun way to learn things. Like you can use songs and music and whatever to learn, which is a great device for students to learn. In the high school, you can do things like interview a famous person. Because you can have a two-way conversation now and interrupt, you can say, hey, I want you to be Abraham Lincoln. And you can have a conversation about what would Lincoln do in this situation. Students come up with their own ideas. You can have a debate. Where AI takes one side of the issue and the student takes the other side of the issue. They use lots of rubrics in the high school. You can create study guides, practice tests. These are the things on and on that teachers can use it for. And the hardest part for teachers is realizing oh, right, it can do that. Oh, right, it can do that.
Wow, this is knocking my socks off. And here I am in Idaho, where I'm wearing very thick socks and you're knocking them off. Because what's coming to mind is the three of us as instructional technologists in our work over the years, what we try to get across is we're not bringing in technologies for the sake of technology. We're bringing in technology to help you reach your learning goals. And in a lot of ways, like I've got a web resources for learning site, I have bunches of learning outcomes that are supported. For example, you're talking about the text. Well, 20 years ago, the big thing was to turn that text into audio for the kids that just struggled in reading and they could follow along and hear at the same time. That's a simple example. And then we also talk about now personalized learning and student-centered learning. And what I'm hearing from you is experiential learning, that the kids can really go deeper and that we can support inquiry by them asking questions. So they're having that debate, or they're having the AI study partner trying to understand the collapse of the Roman Empire. All of these fit under individualization, differentiation, and so many of the instructional strategies that people like us have tried to work with teachers to do. So this just sounds super exciting.
Well, you want me to tell you what I think the future is going to be?
Sure. We're ready.
Okay. You are maybe familiar with Sal Khan from Khan Academy.
Yeah.
And I was going to talk about Magic School, but he has something as well called Khanmigo. And so Khanmigo, they haven't fully released it yet, but AI is able to watch what you're doing and comment on it. So at some point in the future, every student is going to have an individualized tutor with them. So as they're writing out their math homework, there's going to be a camera on it. And then when the student's like, I don't know how to do this, then it's going to coach them along the way. As they're doing any typing or any other kind of writing, it will coach them along the way. So the teacher's going to be, in a sense, the orchestra conductor out there conducting the class and having individualized learning for every single student in the class and getting that data back on how it's going and where it's going. And this should stop the problem where there's a misalignment between what's available with artificial intelligence, in other words, kids use it to cheat, versus what we really want it for them in the classroom. So if the students only use a platform that's designed for them, they can't cheat because they can't copy and paste it in, because AI is going to be like, sorry, you can't do that. And if the student's getting frustrated, the AI is going to be like, let's play a quick game or whatever and help them along. And that's where it's going, really, to Sal Khan and Khan Academy right now. And I bet within a year or two, we're going to see that rolling out in a lot of schools.
I love Khanmigo. I'm all about puns.
There you go. Yes. And David in Spanish, right? So.
Yes, boy, I would love that. And well, I'm going to look into it. I use, like I'm saying, I'm using various AI platforms, but it sounds like I need to set up an account and let them probe me and figure out my profile. And hopefully I don't end up on the CIA or FBI wanted list.
Right.
And then really leverage it like you're saying. So that's super cool. All right, well, let's first look at adult learners a little bit more, and then we'll do a little bit more back with students. So the whole idea of using AI for adults, educators, teachers, you've given some pros. What are some cons at the moment for teachers using AI?
So there's two different perspectives on this. One is, as a teacher, I'm like, oh my gosh, this AI is evil. And my students are using it to copy and paste and cheat. And as an instructor, I have to change how I teach. And I don't like that. So I'm going to try and block it and tell kids not to use it and threaten them and all that stuff, which never works. But that's what some teachers will do. The other downside is it makes me, I can just talk about me, a little bit lazy. So I can now, if I need to write like a letter of support for somebody, let's say I'm a high school teacher and I'm writing letters of recommendation, I can have that written by AI, look at it, and then just customize it along the way. So it pretty much sounds like how I would sound. So there's so many opportunities out there, like writing my bio. I used AI to help with that. That like, oh, I'll just have AI do that. Oh, I'll just have AI do that. And I rationalize it by saying, I already learned to write. I already learned to read. I already have that skill. It's okay. I wouldn't want my students to do that because they need to learn all those skills. But me, that's okay. So there's those moral arguments that go along. There's also the future when, we all may be making paper clips for these AI robots that take over the world, which we can talk about if you want. But we just don't really know where it's going.
Yes.
Ooh, I hope I get to make paper clips.
Well, you see, because you said that, you might be the first on the list.
Yeah, because it'll be recorded out there. Okay, so you were talking about laziness and, should it be replacing some more basic skills? And it reminds me of, why don't I know how to use an abacus? And maybe kids should still be learning long division, or should they, now that they have calculators? And is that something you ever really need to know? That kind of thinking. It just makes me wonder if some of those basics could potentially go by the wayside because they're deemed to be actually not really essential skills.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I'm worried that this time is different. Of course, we say that with every technology, but the abacus may have been replaced by the calculator, but I still had to do a lot of my independent thinking to do some more of the advanced math, where now I could just be like, oh, solve this problem. I guess I'd have to know what question to ask, but the effort that it takes for me to focus and do things is dramatically reduced. And for students and all adults, you're incentivized to take the easier route. That's just how we work as humans. And so students who, there's all this pressure on the line to get good grades and get into college, there's huge incentives to find other ways to support their learning or to support getting the work done.
No, absolutely. I like that you made that distinction because, even with the calculator, you still have to know what a good answer looks like or an answer that makes no sense. Just because you punched it in the calculator, you could have punched it in wrong. You could have been basing your calculation on a false premise and so on. So there's still that ability to critically look at your response and see if it makes sense. And, a lot of kids at the stage we're at will just generate something using AI and then not really look it over. Like you said, you looked at whatever you've written and you said, okay, does this sound like me? Does this make sense? And you tweak it. But kids are just churning it out. And, in some cases, another teacher at my husband Mark's school had a kid turned in an essay, and at the top it said, AI is experimental and this may not be accurate. And, that was right on the essay. It's like, okay, let's be a little more discerning. Anyway.
Well, when you think of just like the multiple intelligences, what's happening in my head right now is spatial intelligence, which I really struggle with. And Google Maps has been very supportive of my weakness there. But I do read real criticisms that people are not exercising that type of intelligence when they don't have to sit down and really think, I want to go from A to B. What are the different pathways? And then you analyze, is this one faster? Is this one slower? Just that almost computational thinking. And if we lose that as part of our development, how will it affect us in other areas as well? So that's pretty profound, I think. What about for students? So one of the benefits you were just sharing via the teacher is the teacher will need to think of new ways to help students generate their own ideas, because right now they've always been able for the last 20 years to be able to go and find either a written essay or information they can cut and paste on the fall of the Roman Empire. But if we're really going to do this well and have the students do the thinking, we need to think of new questions and new ways for them potentially to work with other people. Project-based learning is still going to be there. It's still a winner. So what are some more pros and cons for students as you see it?
Well, a pro is having the tutor for everybody, which is the future, which we already talked about. Also, if you use a program such as Magic School, which I think is probably the best one right now for teachers, you can set up a classroom for students to use, and you only allow them to use certain tools that you want them to use. So that creates that walled garden and that protected environment. I think overall, though, we're going to have to be even more careful about dividing when we use technology and when we don't. And probably the less we use it in school and the more they maybe use it at home, which you can't control anyways, the better. So I think the more we can isolate that out until we have these individualized tutors that are going to help keep an eye on things, the better it's going to be. So you're going to have to change your lessons that are going to maybe ask for more voice or things like that. Or you're going to have some of the work done in class, and maybe you could have the teaching done at home, the flipped classroom model and things like that. So the work time is in the class when it's supervised by the teacher, and you can yank that darn technology out of there.
So I was just about to say blended learning, and technology has really helped that for the last 15 years or so. And the model, like as instructional technologists, we work with teachers to have the students working together outside of class, taking in information, answering questions, analyzing, really up on Bloom's taxonomy. And then just like you say, they come to class, and that's where you work together and hopefully move the students further along towards those learning goals. So that's really, really helpful that this new technology is going to help with blended learning. I like it.
I hope so. I don't know if we can guarantee it, but I hope so.
So let's do a hypothetical. Imagine that
Cool.
You've been asked to advise a group of international school administrators and instructional leaders. All right. You got the power. What advice would you give them if they sought to leverage AI to improve the various components of their school, like financial office, admissions, academics, and so on? What would you say?
I'd say yes. Any other questions? Or do you want more detail, probably? Yes, for sure. When you're at that sort of high level stuff, it depends on where you're at. But basically, then I think you would want to look at AI as your back to I've mentioned before is your thought partner. So imagine you have this person next to you that knows at least a little about everything out there in the world and has probably about a freshman or sophomore level of intelligence in college, which that will be much higher later when we get artificial general intelligence, AGI, and start to have a conversation with artificial intelligence, either through chatting, by typing, or just that voice conversation that I had, and go back and forth asking for ideas. And then do some of your own work and come back and ask it again for more ideas, and do some of your own work and ask it again for more ideas. And you'll come up with some really great things that you never would have thought of. And I think that's one of the most powerful parts of AI is when it is your brainstorming and thought partner, because then you don't have to really check the facts so much. You look at it and you choose what aspects you like, rather than asking it, tell me the causes of the War of 1812, which you'd have to fact check, just looking for ideas that will help you in your job and enhance your own personal abilities, experiences.
So I have a follow-up question there. I was thinking of Chris Smith, who came on the show to talk about data and all the different ways to analyze it, make sense of it, and then use it to plan and implement those plans. A really excellent discussion. So I'm wondering, let's say you're the back office, you're the financial office. I'm wondering where AI is in feeding it data, let's say demographics on the student body. And then your prompt is something like, where are we showing strength in having a diversified group of students, but where could we grow, for example? And can it just scrape all that data up and then potentially analyze and come up with some possibilities?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So there's two issues with that. One is it's hard to put that data in and know exactly how to prompt it. Like, what way should I phrase the question? And then what parameters should I put around that question? So there's a lot of outside programs that use APIs, application program interfaces, that go and grab, let's say using the data set from OpenAI, ChatGPT, they use that model, and then you tell it kind of what you want, and then it will put the parameters around it so that it will kick out the return that you want. The concern, though, is that any data you put in, I guess if you anonymize it would be okay, does go into the large language model itself and then is used for research purposes in the future. So like my daughter, who's a filmmaker, she's finishing up a script that she put together about being an expat kid. She's worried about throwing that into ChatGPT because she's like, oh gosh, it's going to be part of the overall database. And maybe someday somebody will ask for a script on a third culture kid and it's going to kick out her script. It probably wouldn't work that way, but these are some of the issues that people have with using it. But I think you can do it in a protected space so you won't have to worry about that. But just ultimately having the right prompt and having the right parameters around that prompt to get the information back when you kick in data sets like that. And so you might have to find somebody who's familiar with how to do that. It might be difficult to get a good one on your own, but you can always try. I mean, there's not much downside to trying.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you said you downloaded ChatGPT. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, really it's on the website. When I say download, it's like an app on my phone.
Okay. I was going to say, because if it's offline, then that wouldn't be an issue. Is that right?
No, because it's still going to talk to the mothership at some point because it has to get the answer. You can create your own GPT by itself. So I'm going to talk with somebody in the next couple of weeks about creating a GPT for Senya. So when somebody asks questions, it'll give an answer back that Senya would like, based in Senya's voice and based in Senya's data set.
And on that note, I remember reading some magazine just saying the number of those individual GPT or whichever platform you're using, I'll use the word bot, that they're millions and then they're going to be billions. And that's where people start getting scared, that they start learning from each other and start forming their own intelligence. I guess that's one of the angles that some leaders are fearful of and where AI is going to go, because you just can't control all of them if there's no walls between them, right?
Yeah, I think it was the last survey I saw was 10% of the developers of artificial intelligence think it'll take over the world. So, I was optimistic. 90% didn't think that was true. Of course, they're incentivized not to think that way because how could they justify the work they're doing? But right now, there's like about 4 or 5 of these large language models out there. Facebook, Anthropic, OpenAI, China's got one, Google's got one. It looks like Elon Musk is putting one together as well. But they're all separate and they're independent because they don't want to share their data because of competition purposes. But yeah, the question is like later, like if you're writing a script for a movie and it comes out or music comes out, will AI just start developing its own music? And then that's will become played on the radio and all that. Will it have this tremendous influence over our culture and our world? And when we get to artificial general intelligence, when it's super intelligence and it knows everything about everything that's available, that's when things get a little bit scary. And we're even moving now to, in the cool world, is agentic model or an agent model of AI. So probably within 2025, you get on AI and say, hey, book me a reservation. I want to go see David in Boise. So book me from Redmond to Boise and make sure you use my preferences, which is to be in the expensive seat up front. And it will go out and it will take control of your mouse, go on the website and do all that work for you, and then kick it back to you. So this agentic model is coming very soon. They already can do it, but they're going to release it, to the general population at some point that can do all this work for you. So you can say, hey, I want you to use GarageBand and create a tune for me. And so you can go back and have a conversation as it builds it, or maybe it'll just build it for you. And so maybe one day when you think about music, again, on the radio will all be AI, or a lot of it will be AI generated music. And when you go to concerts, it's going to be some band playing AI music for you. It'll be real people. So you'll still get that experience of being with other humans, but it'll be playing music created by AI.
Oh my.
It's very easy to see the moral and, as you said, existential concerns.
Yes.
Very much. Very much.
At Senya, we've been experimenting with using an avatar to deliver some of the coursework online. And so what we did is we took the film of an existing person that has done a lot of online coursework for us, right? So we grabbed her film and I just stuck it into this company called HeyGen, and that's all it needed. It needed like 2 minutes of film. And then we created a script, and then she gets up there and speaks. And it's her speaking. And so the lips change and all that. And some of the movements are just a little awkward, which if you weren't told it was AI, which we tell people, you would probably say like, there's something weird here. But what's really cool is you can also use it for almost any language out there. And so she could speak Chinese, German, whatever, and her lips will change. And I've had people listen to it. I haven't done like an authoritative study on this, but I've had people listen to it and say, yeah, that's a good translation. That's pretty good. So that's crazy. And so things you see soon, you don't really know if it's the real person or AI.
Yeah, and line that up with deep fakes and we're in real trouble.
Yeah. Our only hope is that the AI companies had talked about having a watermark that you wouldn't really see unless you were to look for it, if you knew how to look for it, on anything that is produced by them. Because everything only comes out of like 4 different companies. All these other companies that do AI stuff still rely on the original models to do the background work. And so I hope those guys will come together, and then you'll be able to spot just by a watermark that you could detect. And we would hope that groups like Facebook that are displaying it would say, this is AI generated, that they automatically have that set up.
Yeah, because they want you to know that they made it too.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So, Michael, questions are popping in my head, but we need to pull things together. And I can see us coming back together in 6 months. And either you or your AI representative force will join us at that point. We hope it's you, Michael. We enjoy your humor.
I hope it is too, but I can't guarantee I'll know if it's me. But yeah.
All right. So, in wrapping things up, what else would you like to share? Kind of an overview of anything you feel you've missed or you want to push a little bit harder?
So I love it. It's great. I talk about it. I cheerlead it. And then I maybe get into reality. And if you're familiar with a guy named Tristan Harris,
yes,
who did a lot of work on attention and how you have Facebook, for example, it has a platform or a data set of 2-3 billion people that are clicking. So it is able to use that data set to find ways to grab your attention. And they had the promises of social media. It's going to be awesome. It's going to democratize everything. We're all going to be able to communicate. Anybody can be back to a musician if they want to. No problem. It's going to be just spread along as we go. And it didn't turn out to really work that way. There's a lot of mental health issues with social media. I think maybe the world would be better if it never existed in the first place. they're making those same promises for artificial intelligence. It's going to be fantastic. We're all going to love it. And this comes from 4 or 5 large technology companies that are looking to get as many people as they can, grab as many users as they can on the market, and so that they are the ones that are going to be leading it. Because it's going to be a tremendously lucrative business, potentially. Right now, they're losing money like crazy. So I think we should listen to what Tristan Harris said back then. And he's saying this now, like, look at the promises they made in the past. Didn't really work out that way. So should we be worried, and we should, about the promises that we're making for the future? And right now, there's not a whole lot of guardrails or guidelines from Congress or anything like that that's going to help guide that process going forward. So right now, we're letting the companies regulate themselves. And that should be a big worry.
Should be. Definitely. Michael, I know you enjoy working from your home base and such, and you're good friends with Jeff Udick, and Jeff is just going to town with AI and reaching out, like in Washington and Oregon and other places and internationally. But let's say some international schools did want to reach out to you and you thought, maybe I'll get on a plane or something like that. How can people, 1, follow you, and 2, how can people find your courses?
Probably the best way to do all of that is just go to the website of aiteachertips.com. So it's easy to remember, and there's links to contact me there, and all the coursework is there. I grabbed that domain before other people did.
Well done.
That's a good one.
You asked ChatGPT what would be a good name for, right? And there it was.
I can't remember if I did, but I would have. Like today, I would for sure. When I first used ChatGPT, I wasn't that smart. Now I'm getting more clever on how much I can give my life over to it.
Yes, and yet be very careful about not giving it all up, right?
I'm sure I'm giving it all up, or enough that it's all. I think it's hopeless. Privacy's dead.
Yeah, that's true.
Our only hope is to be one of a zillion, so we're not interesting.
Yeah, right. All right. Any other topics you want to talk about, or anything else you want to school us on?
I think that's it. Oh, I just one plug for perplexity.com as a search engine. I really only use that now as a search engine because it goes out, and if I have a question about what is the best pair of glasses that I could wear for a podcast where it's only audio, so it basically doesn't matter, but it would give me a list of all the glasses that I want. Or if I could say, what is the best color for a car if you live in a winter climate? It'll give you the answer because it goes out and searches and then gets a summary of what it finds from the search, which is a little different than ChatGPT, which just makes up an answer based on its existing knowledge base. That's starting to change now too. But it also shows you where it got the information from the website so you can go off and verify. So really good for students to use for research.
So I'm interested in the name Perplexity, but we could go on and figure out, like, it sounds like it's unperplexing things, but hey.
Yes. Lack of less perplexity.
Anyway, thank you so much, Michael. Oh my gosh, it's been great to catch up with you for one thing.
That's been fun to chat.
And your humor always lightens the day, and your knowledge is untappable by me. So I always have appreciated the way you stay on top of everything that's going on, and then your ability to simplify it and explain it in terms that, even I can understand. That's a skill that ChatGPT cannot teach. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, Audrey and David, it's been a blast. My dog is thankful because I've been talking about AI nonstop with him, and he's tired of it.
And just to share one more thing, a feather in your cap, you were one of the original educational podcasters. I used to listen to your show out of Concordia, and I think you were even doing one before that. So
yeah, I started podcasting in 2004.
Wow.
When it first came out, well, because I did a podcast on autism, right, and I wanted access to all the experts out there without paying $300 an hour. And so I was able to tap into all these groups to get all this information back in the day when autism was much newer.
Well done.
Yes. So kudos to you. Cheers, Michael.
All right, everybody. It's been great.
Thank you for joining us today on Educators Going Global.
You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, and all the other usual suspects.
Please subscribe, like us, and leave a review on Apple and Spotify. and let your teaching friends know about us so we can grow our community.
Please reach out at educatorsgoingglobal@gmail.com and join our Facebook group, Educators Going Global, if you have ideas, comments, or wish to share a Going Global story of your own.
You can also find us on Instagram at Educators Going Global.
Please visit our website as well, www.educatorsgoingglobal.com. All our podcast episodes are on there by topic, along with blog posts, Going Global stories, and our ever-growing resource library. For now, this is Audrey
And David.
inviting you to travel,
Teach.
and connect with us.